Welcome into another Inside Carolina special Olympic sports preview, fall sports at North Carolina. Today it's men's soccer with head coach Carlos Somoano. Carlos, appreciate you taking the time to join us. We were talking a little bit off the air. It's a new world in college athletics, and it affects the Olympic sports a lot more than folks realize. Just how has your last few months been since the NCAA tournament? Rebuilding your roster and getting acclimated to these guys and them getting acclimated to each other.
Yeah, well, appreciate you having me. Thanks for bringing men's soccer on and myself. That's an interesting question. I think it's been a new world for men's soccer for the last 15 years. I mean, every year the target keeps moving. So I think our job is just to focus in on each day, trying to value each opportunity that we have, adjust the best that we can, bring in the best student athletes. That part hasn't changed. How we do it, maybe that changes, but our goal remains the same: bring in quality student athletes that buy into the Carolina culture, what we're trying to do, and then just focus on them, giving them a great experience, trying to be the best team that we can be. And to say how's it changed since the last time we were together last November, it changed every single day, I feel like. So again, that buys into our philosophy. Is just, hey, let's just move this thing on one day at a time.
So you come in, I guess, 15 years. It doesn't seem like it's been that long. Win the national championship at North Carolina. From that point, and I'm going to ask you, because you got to get better every day, but the way it's changed over the last 5 years, with players go pro, players can move around freely. NIL, I don't know if NIL is a big thing for your program. You can expound on that, but how has it made it more difficult as a head coach to procure talent and to keep talent and also to develop talent? Because obviously chemistry is a huge part of all team sports, but especially soccer on the pitch.
Yeah, so you have, your different, there's so many variables that go into it. So unless you're doing this thing boots on the ground day to day, it's very hard to explain to somebody outside. They have this concept of what, college athletics and college athletic recruiting is. But the amount of variables that we're dealing with is overwhelming. So you have your institutional kind of dynamics, and those have been changing over the years, right? The institution has to change from within the athletic department and the admissions. You have your NCAA that has been just very, very turbulent, upside down. Every day you're trying to figure out what's coming next. And then you have men's soccer. Men's soccer, the environment with MLS, USL, players that are now trying to decide whether they participate in college athletics or not, is part of it. And then you have in men's soccer the international player. So they're all over the place. So we just, again, we try to take all the variables into account, do what's best for Carolina. I think at some point you start to feel overwhelmed, but then you just got to go and recenter and say, forget about it. Our job is to bring in good student athletes, wherever it happens to be from, focus on them, give them a good experience, try to win as many games as we can, be hyper aggressive, hyper motivated towards championship mindset. And that's all you can do.
Yeah, Carlos, I know in years past, you've mentioned how you kind of build your roster from like the back forward, almost like defensive minded. And with the turnover offensively, it seems like, Hanson Bertil is like the only returning, offensive guy who's kind of had a little bit of impact last year. How's it been fitting those pieces together on the front line and kind of building that out this year?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, again, I don't know if I ever said that, but maybe I did, in terms of back forward. I think, we had the last two preseason games. We played Campbell and VCU. We had 2 returning starters on the field, I think. So we have a lot of new faces on the field. Bertil, returning player, he did get some starts last year. Has a lot of upside, so he's a guy that we're looking to kind of incorporate in more of a we're go-to guy. And then we have some new players coming in, Gabe Sarah Brecken, and Javier Hernandez. Has done great. Lucas Ross is a guy that we love. He's a returning guy. He's been here for 4 years, but he's battled different challenges, a lot of injuries over the years, so he never really hit his stride. But we believe that if he stays healthy, he can be a guy that's very impactful. Not to mention other players. We got goals from a lot of different places, I think, this year. That's exciting. So, perhaps if we don't have a, 10 to 15 goal scorer, I'd be fine if we have 6 guys that have 6. So we'll figure that out as we go along, though. That's one of the more unpredictable things in a short fall season.
Yeah, and plenty of returning like leadership though. With you have Cortez and goal still, and Check and O'Farrell and other guys that kind of have been there for 4 years or more. And how important is that when you have so many new faces to have them like integrate guys in the program?
That's a great point. I think you start to think about having a lot of new faces, a lot of turnover, but we have some great returning characters, and really leaning on them with the leadership. They're very ambitious leaders, and they got what it takes to represent the Carolina leadership. So that's an exciting part for us, and I think that really can help bring the new guys and the dynamics together. So it's a very, very good point. We have some wonderful returning leaders.
For you, Coach, what does leadership look like from the veterans? You mentioned the Carolina structure, the Carolina way, I guess, is what we hear a lot. But what is leadership, and what do you demand leadership-wise from those returning guys, those elder statesmen, especially in this college world where if you get a 4th or 5th year guy these days, you're doing well, and you've got a couple of them.
That's right. Mission focused, maybe a good way to sum it up, right? I think leadership, a lot of leadership is just staying on course and helping guys stay on course, because there's so many ways to get distracted. There's so many things that could take you out of being your best if you allow them inside your head, right? So I think guys that have that experience know that, some of those things are traps, and to stay away from it and help guys, stay focused on what's really meaningful without, and that could be anything from class, off the field, on the field, the referee's a decision that we don't like, which is pretty much happening 4 or 5 times a game. So, you can, disrupt you, or it can, be like, hey, let's get on with it. Playing time, anything else that you can think about that becomes a possible distraction. So I think our guys are really tuned into that, our leaders, and they're really doing a great job to say, hey, be appreciative of what you have. You're at Carolina. It's the best place in the world to represent yourself as a college athlete and a college men's soccer player. And don't forget that. Be grateful to the community. Be grateful to the people that are helping you get an education and help you achieve your lifelong dreams. And use that as motivation to give everything you have. It's quite honestly, it's that simple.
When you're recruiting players, and you mentioned international players and recruit all over the world, what is the toughest thing to find with those players that fit in what you talked about with Carolina and Chapel Hill? Because I think we all agree Carolina and Chapel Hill is different in a good way, but it's still different for young people coming in and to getting them into not only into the system you want to play, but the culture you want to have. What's been the challenge, or is there a challenge out there on the recruiting trail doing that as a head coach and as a staff?
Yeah, I think one of the, I hate to say this, but one of the biggest challenges for international recruiting at Carolina is just the admission standards are very high, right? So I think generally speaking, internationally, and a lot of the international students, they'll come over to Carolina or come over to the States because internationally it's hard to compete in your sport and pursue higher education at the same time. So most of the international students, they have to make a choice. Their clubs will say, hey, if you want to compete at this standard, you have to give up education. So they seek out the U.S. and they say, well, wait a second, there's a place where we can do both. But as they've achieved high levels of soccer in their country, it's come at the expense of investment in their academics, whether they've wanted to do that or not. So their grades or their academic history may not always meet the standards that we're trying to get, in spite of the fact that they're motivated and ambitious to pursue an education. That's why they're coming. So that's a big challenge. Otherwise, I think we're not necessarily different for international students. They most of the time don't really understand what they're getting into because the system is very different, which actually provides, in a lot of cases, an advantage because they come over, they see what we do have to offer, and they actually buy in pretty quickly once they get used to the system. They're so appreciative of the fact that they can study and pursue their sport at a high level at the same time. I find it almost the opposite. I find it that they're very willing to embrace this kind of culture.
Coach, I know you mentioned before we started about, the very short practice time before you get to exhibitions and kind of getting into school and things like that. But I'm curious how many guys you had, if at all, played like summer soccer, like USL2 or anything like those kind of programs, and if that kind of gets them ready for the season at all, or is that something that you guys want them to do, or along that line?
Yeah, summer soccer is an interesting topic. I mean, that could be a podcast on its own, right? So, it tends to follow along with much of the other soccer environment in this country, in that there's a wide variety. There's some environments that are really, really good. There's some that need some work. And some of our players need to be playing USL 2 and summer soccer, and some may need a break. So it's a hard one to pin down, but we embrace the guys playing during the summer for sure. We're excited about it, and we want them to do what's best for them.
I know last year Tate Johnson kind of came in as a freshman and had an immediate impact. From this freshman class that's coming in, do you feel like there's any guys that really stand out early on or are going to really contribute?
So if we're going in and looking in hindsight, it's an easy one to say, wow, Tate was wonderful. Well, one thing with Tate is that he was able to come in the spring in January and get a good spring in, helped him acclimate. But even that, I would not have foreseen 2 days before our opening game that Tate would have grown over his 2 semesters as much as he did. And that's a testament to him and his relentless hard work. And I think we deserve some credit for that too, in providing him a wonderful environment for him to grow and develop. So for me to kind of foresee the next one, I wouldn't have foreseen that with Tate. And he's a guy that achieved some wonderful things. It's a little bit hard to do, but we do have some great incoming players, freshmen included, and I'm over the moon excited to be working with them.
When you look at the schedule, the women started at Tennessee. You guys have a fairly challenging schedule. How do you build that schedule out, and do you build it out based on what you want to see from your team or to learn from your team? Obviously, the exhibitions, but you mentioned you're 7 days in or so, and you got to start the season coming up here. How does that process work for you and your staff when you're constructing that, and how does it change maybe year to year based on what what you have or how you feel about your team, or does it?
Yeah, I wish it had more to do with our team and some kind of strategy for that season, but I'm afraid to say it doesn't, because it's hard to predict what our team's going to look like a year out when we're making these choices. One, two, I think we do build it more based on trying to fit games in around our conference schedule and our travel within conference. So I'm trying to make sure that, hey, I mean, I think one of the toughest things about playing in the ACC is our conference being just brutally challenging. And so when you're putting a schedule together and you have to play, Notre Dame and then at Stanford, and then you're trying to get a game in between there, you're just hoping to get through the week with, healthy bodies sometimes, right? But you also want to balance making sure that you give your team an opportunity from an RPI standpoint to get a large bid at the end of the year. So you got to play quality enough opponents that can give you an opportunity to do that. But you also got to give them an opportunity to survive. I hate to say that, the season health-wise, because you just get beat down if you play a schedule that's just overwhelming. So our schedule this year is quite challenging. The hope being that you have enough depth to manage the season and get through, because I think one way to manage challenging schedules is to make sure that you get a quality rotation of players so that they stay healthy and fresh and have enough energy game over game.
You mentioned officials and referees and all that and making calls. Has the game, I don't know if this is a good question or not, but I'm going to ask it because it's interesting to me, because it seems extremely physical, and it's gotten more and more physical, at least to my layman's eyes, watching it, and it almost takes away from the skill aspect of it. Is that a legitimate thought? When I'm watching soccer, especially men's college soccer, it seems brutally physical to me, and it becomes who's the toughest physically rather than who's the best skillfully and tactician wise and all. Is that fair?
I think it is. I think it's a great observation. And I always use a better example, because I think there's a lot of confusion about men's, college soccer, right? People like to say, hey, how does this compare to like MLS or MLS Next Pro or USL? And I said, well, it's a very hard comparison for multiple reasons. But I think the biggest dynamic in men's college soccer is it's more equal to World Cup qualifying than it is to league play, because your first game to your last game is critically important to your RPI, your ability for selection, your rankings. Every game is critical. So every game is being played as if it's a World Cup qualifier or a knockout competition. And if you watch World Cup qualifying or any kind of knockout competition, those games have a completely different look. They're much more physical. They're much more, there's less concern about, how it looks, more long throw-ins, more set pieces that are into the box. Every play feels like you're hanging on, the edge of your seat. And I think that's really exciting. But it comes with the nature of the game being very critical, that you pay attention to every aspect in every detail, and the margins become smaller and smaller in terms of getting a result. The pressure mounts up if you're playing a game and one loss and you're like, holy cow, wait a second, we just lost a game and now we got to go play Duke. Oh, what happens? So it's like World Cup qualifying. Hey, we drop a result against whoever it is, and then the next one becomes even more magnified, right? I think that's a better way to kind of frame it when you start to think about it. And then when you start to watch the games, you start to say, okay, now I understand why the physicality, why the end justifies the means type play going on. So.
Yeah, Coach, I'm curious about your practice situation currently. I know the fields that you guys usually practice on got hit with that flooding and everything. How has that kind of been? Has there been an adjustment? Have you been able to get back out there and practice, or have you kind of had to alter that early to start season?
Another variable where it's really important for us just to focus on making the most of our opportunities, taking advantage of what we have, being appreciative of what we have. So, yeah, you tell me you got to go practice at the park, we'll go practice at the park. That's the least of my concerns. Our facilities staff is doing a wonderful job to give us the best that they can. The reality is that we're going to be dealing with floods and bad weather, just like everybody is across the country. We had 2 seasons where we had to play at Wake Med, train off campus, because we went through construction on campus to have a beautiful stadium as we do. We went to the College Cup those 2 years. If we spend too much time thinking about where we're practicing, we're not spending enough time thinking about what are we doing in practice and how to get better. So that's so low on my list of concerns. But practice is going great. I just love being around these guys. We'll see. I hope we can be an effective, result oriented team. I think we can. I'm very optimistic about that, and I'm not, trying to downplay anything. You just never know until you know. But one thing I do know, one thing I've already concluded is I love being around these guys. We got a great group of kids, men, and they're working their tails off, whether we train at Cedar Falls Park, Findlay, or Dorrance.
Yeah, kind of along those lines, but removed from that situation, I'm curious if you have an opinion on the grass or turf debate, because obviously the World Cup games are only played on grass. I know some college stadiums have turf, and you guys will play on turf. So do you have an opinion on that, or player safety or anything like that?
It's changing over time too, right? I think that's changed significantly over time, and one of the reasons being that advancements and what they're able to put down for turf, right? It just becomes better and better and better. So you see a lot of professional teams around the world that are playing their home games on turf. As long as you're putting down a quality turf and grooming it and taking care of it, I think it starts to change a little bit. I'm still a traditionalist and love to play on grass, good quality grass field. But as Tommy had mentioned, like, I think one of the things that's very important for us is to be able to play a quality, technical, thoughtful game. That's kind of how we built our program over the years. So having a good playing surface is very important to us. I think the game takes on a different look when you're playing on a playing surface that is not as predictable, and maybe is not to our advantage if that's how we're building our program.
That's a great point there. I mean, we've seen fields that have grass that's 4 or 5 inches deep, slow teams down and all. If I may ask you a fun question, I've asked the other coaches, and I think you're roughly my age, so I may know the answer to this. But if you got out there and played with your players, can you still keep up? I asked Erin Matson that, and of course she's basically their age, and she insisted that give her a few weeks and she'd be right back out at it. But
Aaron's not on the backside of 50, so. Uh, but
and could you survive the physicality?
Depends how big the field is. If we can make the field a little bit smaller, I think I got a shot. But it's a funny story because it's a funny question because we still famously, go look up in the New York Times, famously still play Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, kind of our old man coaches games. And there's more than a couple times where we take on some young bucks, and we are definitely holding our own. But that being said, yes, it's not a 120 by 75-yard field. So as long as we can keep it a little bit smaller, we're okay. We're still hanging in there.
Yeah, I aged out when I realized these young guys are trying to set an example, and I realized I had to go to work in the morning. These young guys are trying to hurt somebody. So
Yeah, you wake up the next day a little bit sore. That's for sure. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. It's always good to get insight into the programs that I personally feel don't get enough press at North Carolina and the Olympic sports. And let me ask you that as we get out of here. What is it like for you personally to be a part of a university and the sports programs that have had so much success? You've had personal success we've talked about, but just to be a part of that Carolina coaches community where everywhere you go, you can talk to a national championship level coach about anything. It seems to me that that is a big thing for all you guys that are involved in it. How do you take it?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword sometimes because you everywhere you look around, you're like, what the heck? But I think it's very motivating, right? So I think it gives you a sense of responsibility, and I think, quite honestly, probably a lot of the coaches that are here, they're so driven and self-motivated that this only fuels them kind of exponentially to really strive for excellence. But I feel even more so an obligation to try to give everything I have just because of what everything Carolina has given to me. And then when I get to look around and see all the other coaches doing the same thing, it reminds me on my bad days, hey, get your head out of your butt, stop feeling sorry for yourself, and go back to work. I love the coaches that we're able to hang out with. Our administration is awesome. Our support staff is dynamite. And I doubt, I'm 100% sure all the other coaches feel the same way. I'm blessed to be part of Carolina and just thankful for the opportunity that I've been given.
That is head coach Carlos Somoano. North Carolina opens the season, UCF in Chapel Hill. That's Thursday night already. Good gracious. August 21st is already Thursday. And then Seattle and then Evansville. And then you start the road trips you were talking about with Charleston. Coach, I do appreciate you taking your time. Good luck this season. We look forward to following some of it and watching the Tar Heel men's soccer team.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Shout out to Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com, sponsors of this show. Shout out to men's soccer. Shout out to Jeremy for hooking this interview up. Shout out to Cade for joining me. Everybody take time to read the message boards, read the stories, and follow UNC men's soccer. Talk soon.